Welcome back, MTG Burgeoning community and YouTube viewing audience. If you are part of the latter and wish to join the former, click that subscribe button now. In so doing, you become eligible for many sweet reward series. In today's Tuesday Build a Deck video, we take a last look at the commander we've been building a deck around over the last several weeks, Riku of Two Reflections. Hello, welcome, and what's up, MTG Burgeoning fans? Here we are with our last installment of Riku of Two Reflections. If you're a little late to this party, you can click on any of the links below to get you caught up to exactly how we built Riku, the revisions we've made, the cards that we've included, and the reasons for those cards. And of course, you can go to the tappedout.net page where you can see the full deck list in addition to the results, the very detailed results of our gameplay, both pre-revision and post-revision. So we know who our commander is, it's Riku. And I am going to say that after playing with the revised deck, I am much more pleased with its performance than I was during the pre-revisions. And I'm going to point out that the pre-revision games, nearly all of them were won, but they just didn't feel like clean victories. And on the other side of that coin, every game that I played with the post-revised deck, the two games, it's only been two, so it's a small sample size, they were both losses, but boy did the deck perform so much better. And that's saying something if a deck that's 0-2 feels better and feels more like a victory than playing a deck that's 5-1. That's just exactly how it was. The revisions made the deck so much smoother, so much more streamlined. There was more removal at our disposal. The land base was improved. We had a clearer vision as to what we wanted to do, just coming up short in the end. And those two losses were better than any of the victories we had pre-revision. That's as simple as that. So in today's video, I'm just going to take a quick moment to highlight some of the cards that I thought were all-stars during this game playing process, both pre and post-revision. Some of them are going to be very self-explanatory. I mean, nobody really needs to have me sit behind a camera and talking about the virtues of why Gaia's Cradle is such an awesome card. So, I mean, that doesn't really take a great deal of conversation. All right, so some of the best cards that performed during these games. Again, this falls right under the line with Gaia's Cradle, but having Consecrated Sphinx in play whenever an opponent draws a card and we're drawing two cards, that just refills our hands so quickly. Over a round of turns, we're putting 4, maybe 6 cards into our hand. And particularly with Riku, when we're trying to cast all of these spells and making copies and all the mana and the lands that we're drawing, Consecrated Sphinx was just a great force. And I'm going to present both of these cards at the same time because they are equally very powerful in this deck. And that's going to be Chancellor of the Forge and Avenger of Zendikar. These are our two 1A and 1B targets for getting creatures into play that are going to create just an army of creature tokens that we can use to activate an unstoppable Gaia's Cradle, or we can use with a card that we're going to talk about in a little while. They're also amazing targets for a Kicked Rite of Replication or for a Lithoform Engine, and unsurprisingly, those are also cards we're going to touch on very briefly here. These two creatures are a couple of the best creatures we can have going into play if we've got Riku or any of the other spells that are helping us to copy these creatures. So those two were the standout creatures, more so than the Consecrated Sphinx, I would say. Because although the Consecrated Sphinx is available by putting cards into our hand, it being just a 4/6 flyer doesn't really do much for our win condition aside from filling our hand with those necessary spells. Chancellor of the Forge and Avenger of Zendikar, very powerful. Again, this is another one of those cards that doesn't really need a great deal of discussion, particularly if you already have a Gaia's Cradle on the battlefield. But Genesis Wave was just absolutely huge during the playtesting phase, and because of the strength of this card, it was so much easier to let some of the other win conditions go, like we talked about in our last video, like the Warp World package. Keeping Genesis Wave was a reason why it was easier to let some of those other win conditions go. Another another card that doesn't really need a lot of discussion, and that's Rite of Replication. Kicking it is pretty much game winning, as you'll see when you read the detailed gameplay descriptions over on the tappedout.net page. Even just casting it for 2 and a blue, depending on what we copy. I mean, if we're copying a Chancellor of a Forge or an Avenger of Zendikar or something else, the non-kicked version of Rite of Replication is powerful enough. But kicking it as well, it's game ending, folks. It is game ending. Speaking of game ending, here's another one of those spells that fall in line with Genesis Wave, with Rite of Replication, and that's Lithoform Engine. I mean, just having the ability to tap 2, turn this sideways, and copy any activated or triggered ability is amazing. 3 in turning this sideways, any instant or sorcery. 4 in this sideways, copy target permanent spell we control. It's just ridiculous. Lithoform Engine performed extremely well the times that it was in play. All right, and the next 2 cards are just going to be a package deal because of what they represent to us for the purposes of this deck. And that's going to be Regrowth and Eternal Witness. Since we're not in black, we do not have the best tutors available. So by having a Regrowth and an Eternal Witness in our deck, when we cast a spell such as Intuition, when Intuition reads, search our library for any 3 cards, reveal them to target opponent. He or she chooses one, put that card into our hand and the rest into our library. I'm sorry, and the rest into our graveyard. Shuffle your library afterwards. So by casting Intuition and targeting these 2 cards, Regrowth and Eternal Witness, and then any 3rd card, which if we slide these to the left a little bit, which could be something like Lithoform Engine or Genesis Wave or Gaia's Cradle or another card that we're going to talk about in a moment, pairing one of those cards with these 2 guarantees in one way, shape, or form, we're going to get that 3rd card. If they give us Regrowth, we're casting Regrowth and bringing card number 3 to our hand. If they give us Eternal Witness, we're casting Eternal Witness and we're bringing that card to our hand. If we have enough mana, we'll cast one, get the other, and get the 3rd card back. And there's no way they're going to give us the 3rd card. So having Intuition, in addition to Regrowth and Eternal Witness, were absolute all-stars. And it was a package that I was able to cast multiple times during those games. Extremely powerful. Probably the most powerful card in our deck outside of Gaia's Cradle. And that's going to be this Earthcraft. So much of what we want to do is built around Earthcraft. We revised the entire installation of the land base to make sure that we have enough basic lands available to tap our token creatures, to untap our basic lands, to continuously generate mana, to cast more spells, get more creatures into play, untap our lands, keep casting spells. This is the impetus of our explosive turn and what we're trying to do. Outside of Gaia's Cradle, not by a long shot either, it's a lot closer than it may seem, but outside of Gaia's Cradle, Earthcraft is the most powerful card in this deck. And the last 2, I'm just going to put them up there at the same time because they're both extremely good at what they do. One of which is Skyshroud Claim, and the other is Factor Fiction. Skyshroud Claim, and they both have a CMC of 4. Skyshroud Claim, we search your library for up to 2 forest cards and put them into play. They don't have to be basic forests. Sometimes it's a basic forest and maybe a shock, because we want to make sure we have some basic lands in play in order to utilize Earthcraft. And then Factor Fiction, CMC of 4, we reveal the top 5 cards of our library, and opponent separates those cards into 2 piles. Put one pile into our hand and the other into our graveyard. And I remember definitely one time I was able to cast Factor Fiction end of turn and copy it with a Riku ability and have each opponent do a Factor Fiction for me, which ended up putting a Genesis Wave in my hand and a Court of Calling with a Gaia's Cradle in play. Oh, it was just ridiculous. You can read all about it on the tappedout.net page. But Factor Fiction and Skyshroud Claim were definitely all-stars in addition to all of the other cards presented in this video. And MTG Burgeoning fans, that is all I've got. We spent the last several weeks putting together Riku of Two Reflections, and then we spent 1 week tearing about 20% of the deck apart to make it better and more streamlined, and I really think we accomplished that goal. I have no further revisions in mind. I think we can say excellent job to all who participated in this deck building venture. Riku of Two Reflections, I look forward to sharing this on EDH Commander Thursdays. Make sure you tune in next Tuesday for another Build a Deck event. I'll be here. Will you?